when America almost lost New York, the 7 years that changed a city forever. Imagine one city, and if it slipped away at the wrong moment, it could have rewritten the entire American story. Not Washington, not Boston, New York. In the late 1700s, New York wasn't skyscrapers and neon. It was something even more powerful, a key on the map, a massive harbor, a gateway to trade routes, and a strategic position at the mouth of the Hudson River, meaning whoever controlled the city could influence movement, supplies, and communication across entire regions. That's why, when the struggle for independence heated up, New York became the prize everyone understood, even if they didn't say it out loud. And here's the twist. The most important part of this story isn't just who was in charge. It's what quietly changed inside the city, how daily life shifted, how power worked behind the scenes, and how the effects lasted long after the headlines moved on. 1. Why New York was the ultimate control point. New York's power came from one word: access. Ships, goods, money, and information flowed through the harbor. The Hudson River acted like a corridor stretching inward. Control the city, and you didn't just control a place, you controlled a system. But New York also had something else, a divided identity. Some residents supported the push for independence. Others believed staying connected to Britain offered stability and protection for business. That internal split made the city incredibly sensitive, like a room where one small change can shift the entire mood. So New York wasn't just valuable, it was fragile, and that combination made it central to everything. 2. 1776, the year the city's future. Tilted in 1776, New York's direction changed fast. The city became a major center of British administration and planning in North America. Over time, New York wasn't simply a city on the map. It turned into a headquarters for influence, coordination, and decision-making. This is where the idea of hidden control begins to make sense. Because sometimes you don't need to dominate every state, every road, every town. Sometimes controlling a single hub, one city that connects everything, can shape the entire chessboard. 3. A city under new rules, how daily life shifted. Once New York became a central base, everyday life started to feel different. People arrived in waves, some searching for safety, others following opportunity, and some simply adapting to the new reality. The city grew more crowded, and housing became more complicated. Buildings were repurposed, neighborhood rhythms changed, and there was another shift that mattered more than most people realize. New York began to feel like a place where order and oversight came before comfort, not in a dramatic, movie-style way, more like a steady tightening of routine. More rules, more caution, more pressure to blend in, depending on what side you were on. When a city becomes strategic, normal life doesn't disappear. It just becomes managed. 4. The Great Fire, the night the city felt its limits. In 1776, a massive fire swept through parts of New York City and destroyed a large number of buildings. Even today, historians debate how it started, because the period was tense and rumors traveled fast. But the most important part for your story isn't blame, it's impact. After the fire, housing became even harder to find. The city's infrastructure took a major hit. And the emotional effect was huge. It reinforced the feeling that New York was living under intense uncertainty. It's one thing for a city to be strategic on paper. It's another thing to feel that reality in the streets. 5. The quiet weapon. Information. Now here's the smartest part of the story, something that fits perfectly with the idea of hidden influence. New York wasn't only a physical hub, it was an information hub, because decisions made in New York echoed across the entire region. That's why intelligence networks became so important. One famous example is the Culper Ring, a group that shared critical updates and reports connected to George Washington's side. No dramatic hero poses, no cinematic speeches, just people passing messages, tracking movements, and piecing together what was happening inside the most important city. This matters because it reveals a bigger truth. Even when you can't change reality quickly, you can limit the damage by understanding the system, by knowing what's coming before it arrives. 6. Why control lasted 7 years. Here's what shocks most people. New York remained under British control for most of the entire conflict period, right up until 1783. Why did it last so long? Because New York had everything a long-term base needs. A strong harbor, direct access to major routes, a geography that helped it stay connected while remaining defensible, and a city structure that made it easier to manage as a central hub. New York wasn't just important. New York was useful, the kind of useful that keeps a strategy alive for years. 7. The turning point. When New York returned to American hands, then came the moment that still matters in New York history. November 25, 1783, known as Evacuation Day. That's the day the last British forces left New York, and American forces entered the city in a symbolic return, one that felt like a real closing chapter. Not because every problem instantly vanished, but because New York was no longer the headquarters of outside control. And in a story built around strategic cities, that moment is everything. When the hub changes hands, the entire map feels different. 8. The after effect, what stayed long, after 1783. But the story doesn't end when people leave, because New York was transformed. It learned that trade, access, and geography can shape history as much as politics. It learned that controlling a single city can change the rhythm of an entire region. And it learned, painfully, that normal life can be reshaped quietly when a city becomes too important to ignore. In a way, those 7 years helped New York become what it later became. A city that understands power isn't only loud. Sometimes power is logistics. Sometimes it's information. Sometimes it's location. Ending. When you hear New York, you probably think of the future. But New York has one of the most intense hidden chapters in the past. 7 years that pushed the city into the center of history and taught America a lesson it never forgot. Sometimes the real struggle isn't just about territory. It's about the hub, the place where trade, timing, and information meet. And for a moment in history, that hub was New York. If this story surprised you, hit like and subscribe, because history is full of moments like this, where one city can change everything. Comment below, which city should we uncover next?